Today we're getting into the work of, well, a real giant of cinema, Francis Ford Coppola. His films have just left such a huge mark, really shaped modern filmmaking.
Absolutely. Coppola, he's an artist with this incredible range, from these really intimate family stories all the way to huge historical epics. He was always pushing boundaries.
He really was. And for this deep dive, we want to focus in on what many feel is his absolute magnum opus, The Godfather, back from 1972.
A landmark film, no question.
Exactly. Our goal here is to really unpack its impact, not just on film history, but maybe even on art history more broadly.
Yeah, looking at his style, the whole historical and cultural background of the film.
Right, the innovations he brought and how people have seen it over the years.
It's a lot to cover, but essential for understanding Coppola.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Coppola's style. One of the things that always strikes me is how he zeroes in on families, those internal dynamics.
That's so true. He consistently puts human relationships, particularly family, right at the heart of his stories.
And in The Godfather, it's not just background, is it? It's the engine.
It is the engine. The main conflicts, they all stem from that clash,
Yeah.
family loyalty versus individual morality.
Yeah.
And you see that same kind of focus on deep connections in his other big films, too, like The Conversation or even Apocalypse Now. The epic scale somehow makes the personal stuff even more intense.
That's a great point. Even with these huge events swirling around, the emotional core stays really personal, really relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the look of the film. Just stunning. That rich, dark, almost painterly quality.
Yeah.
How did they achieve that?
Well, that's largely down to his amazing collaboration with Gordon Willis, the cinematographer.
Right, Willis.
They developed this style using chiaroscuro, that strong contrast between light and shadow, and they were really deliberate about using minimal artificial light.
It feels so natural, yet so dramatic.
Exactly. In The Godfather, it's not just mood lighting. It actually shapes how you experience the story. Think of it like a Renaissance painting come to life. Darkness hides things, light reveals, sometimes brutally.
Yeah.
It really pulls you into this world where, total clarity, total honesty. It's rare. The dimly lit faces, that slightly grainy texture, it's incredibly immersive.
It absolutely is. It's so different from that bright, kind of glossy look many studio films had then. Huh. And it's not just the visuals, it's the rhythm, too. The pacing feels very deliberate.
Yes, deliberate is the perfect word. Coppola builds suspense so masterfully through subtlety.
Little gestures, long pauses.
Exactly, those loaded silences, the looks between characters, not through frantic action. His editing, often with Walter Murch, favors these smooth, longer takes. It lets you, the viewer, really get inside the characters' heads, feel that tension simmering just under everything. You sense the weight of what's not being said.
You really do. And the themes.
Yeah.
Wow, power, honor, or their version of it, belonging, it's all in there.
Yeah. These are definitely recurring themes in Coppola's work, yeah. But The Godfather, it's arguably their most powerful exploration.
How so?
Well, you have the mafia's rigid hierarchy, their specific codes about honor, the sheer weight of tradition. It's woven into the fabric of the story.
And Michael's journey really embodies that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. His transformation is this deep dive into those dynamics, finding his place, wielding power within that complex system.
So thinking about how massive The Godfather was, it's interesting to look at Coppola's own path leading up to it. What was his early career like?
Well, he was born in 1939, came from a very artistic family. He actually studied theater first before film.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He did Dementia 13 early on, but got more recognition writing screenplays like for Patton.
Patton, right, big film.
Huge. But The Godfather, that was really his arrival as a major, fully formed director. Everything kind of clicked into place.
And this was happening right when Hollywood was going through a massive change, right? This new Hollywood era. What did that mean practically?
Yeah, the late 60s, early 70s, it was a real shakeup. New Hollywood meant younger directors, often more independent-minded, getting more creative control.
So less studio interference.
Pretty much. They were telling riskier stories, more complex, more realistic stuff, often reflecting what was going on socially and politically. Before that, studios kept a much tighter rein.
So Coppola had the freedom to make The Godfather feel gritty.
Exactly. He could adapt Puzo's novel with that raw, realistic tone, stepping away from the old Hollywood glamour. It felt fresh, even if it was dark.
It definitely had that almost documentary feel sometimes.
Right.
And it came out when Italian Americans were often dealing with negative stereotypes, right?
That's a really crucial piece of context, yeah. Coppola, being of Italian descent himself, he engages directly with that. The immigrant experience, the American dream, that tension between assimilating and holding on to your roots.
It's all in there.
And then layer on the wider context, post-Vietnam Watergate unfolding, there was this deep distrust of authority simmering.
You feel that in the film, don't you?
Yeah.
Power operating in the shadows.
Exactly. The fragility of institutions. It's like the Corleones become this dark mirror reflecting broader anxieties about power and corruption in society.
Wow, it's amazing how it all connects. Okay, for anyone listening who somehow hasn't seen it,
Yeah.
hard to imagine, but still, could you give us the quick rundown of the plot?
Sure. So it's centered on the Corleone family, this powerful crime family. At the head is Don Vito Corleone, played, of course, by Marlon Brando.
Iconic.
Absolutely. Someone tries to assassinate him, he survives, and his youngest son, Michael, that's Al Pacino, who initially wanted nothing to do with the family business.
Lore hero, yeah.
Right, he gets pulled in. And the film, really the whole trilogy, tracks his transformation from this reluctant outsider into this ruthless new Don. It's a journey driven by power, necessity, and a lot of personal sacrifice.
It's such a compelling arc. So clearly, The Godfather was way more than just another gangster movie. It feels like a real synthesis of Coppola's style and themes.
Yeah. Totally. It brings together everything we've been talking about. The family focus, the chiaroscuro lighting, that deliberate pacing, the exploration of illicit power.
It balances the epic scale with this incredible intimacy.
Precisely. No other film of his quite hits that same balance, that same resonance, I think.
And the acting. Brando as Vito. Just legendary. Pacino's slow descent. Chilling.
Coppola had this amazing knack for getting iconic performances. Brando's quiet authority, Pacino's journey from sort of moral conflict to hardened resolve.
And the supporting cast, too. James Pion, Robert Duvall.
Incredible ensemble. Coppola really believed in rehearsals, building that natural chemistry. You really buy them as a family unit with all that shared history and tension.
You absolutely do. It feels like you're eavesdropping on a real family. Just an extraordinary one.
Right.
Now, it was based on Puzo's novel, which was huge itself. How did Coppola handle the adaptation?
Well, he stayed pretty faithful to the main story beats from Puzo's book, but he definitely brought his own vision.
How so? Did he change much?
He added layers of psychological depth, I think, and he notably fleshed out some of the female characters, like Kay Adams, Diane Keaton's character.
Right, gave her more agency.
A bit, yeah. And his overall approach felt more restrained than the book, maybe less sensational. He focused more on atmosphere, on the internal journeys of the characters. He knew film could tell the story visually, with subtext, not just dialogue.
It's a masterclass in adaptation, really.
Yeah.
Honoring the source, but making it cinematic. Okay, let's shift to why The Godfather isn't just great, but genuinely innovative. What boundaries did it push?
Well, technically it was groundbreaking. That Gordon Willis cinematography, we talked about the chiaroscuro, the directional light, that was hugely influential.
People started copying that look.
Oh, yeah. It really encouraged filmmakers to use lighting more expressively, more moodily, even in realistic dramas. That darkness became almost like a character itself.
It really does feel like that. And what about sound and editing?
Well, Nino Rota's score,
Yeah.
Instantly recognizable, right?
Absolutely. That main theme.
It perfectly captures that mix of melancholy and power. But beyond the music, the sound design, and especially the editing, the use of parallel editing was key.
Like the baptism scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cutting between the solemn baptism and the brutal murders happening simultaneously. Or the wedding sequence, cutting between the joy outside and the dark business inside.
It creates such powerful contrasts.
It set a new standard for that kind of narrative balancing act, showing the contradictions baked into their world, family, and violence side by side.
And narratively, it felt different too, didn't it? Not your typical linear crime story.
No, not at all. It had this more episodic feel, developing characters slowly over 3 hours. That alone challenged expectations for major studio films, the length, the complexity. And Michael's arc, his descent into darkness, is so gradual, so morally gray. He's not just a bad guy. That really helped modernize the whole idea of the anti-hero in cinema.
He's complex, believable, even as he does terrible things.
Exactly. No easy answers.
And the film's influence.
Influence?
It's just everywhere, isn't it? Subsequent films, TV shows.
Oh, completely undeniable. You hear filmmakers like Scorsese, Guillermo del Toro talk about Coppola's influence all the time.
And TV shows like The Sopranos owe it a huge debt.
Massive debt. The structure, the tone, the focus on family dynamics within organized crime. The Godfather basically wrote the playbook. Even specific techniques like using natural light indoors became common in dramas for decades after.
It really set a new template for the whole genre. Something that always strikes me is how the film pulls you into their world, the mafia's world, and you almost sympathize,
Yeah.
even though they're criminals.
That's a really interesting point, and one critics like Roger Ebert talked about. The film is told almost entirely from inside their world.
You rarely see the victims outside their circle.
Exactly. It's a deliberate choice. It makes you understand their internal logic, their codes, their loyalties, which can lead to a kind of complicated sympathy. You see their human side, the weddings, the meals, the struggles, which muddies the moral waters.
You're seeing it on their terms.
Yeah.
And loyalty. That seems to be the absolute core value,
Yeah.
right, above everything else.
Loyalty to the family is everything. It trumps honesty, the law, anything. Michael's secrecy, his willingness to betray people close to him for the family, that's central.
That baptism sequence again. Loyalty cemented through extreme violence.
It's a chilling illustration of that principle in action.
Yeah.
Calculated and brutal.
So when it first came out in '72, what was the reaction? Was it an instant classic?
It was huge. A sensation, really. Critically acclaimed, massive box office success.
Oscars.
Oh yeah, 9 nominations, won 3 big ones. Best Picture, Best Actor for Brando, Best Adapted Screenplay. Critics loved the depth, the faithfulness to the book's spirit, the sheer scale of it. It was immediately seen as something special.
And it's not like its reputation has faded. It's still considered one of the greats 50 years on.
Absolutely. It constantly tops those best films ever lists. Academics still study it. It's deeply woven into pop culture. They keep restoring it in high def. Its value is just enduring.
You hear lines from it all the time. An offer he can't refuse.
Yeah.
The oranges.
Exactly. Those things have become cultural shorthand. People analyze the oranges, the symbolism. It's inspired so much discussion about identity, power, the myth of the criminal.
It's more than just a movie. It's a cultural artifact. And, it's interesting. The story itself, the old guard versus the new, more ruthless generation in the family, it kind of mirrors what was happening in Hollywood then.
That's a really sharp observation. Many people have drawn that parallel. The Corleone family's internal struggle reflects that shift towards auteur cinema in Hollywood. Old traditions versus a new, ambitious, maybe more compromised generation.
And the casting reinforces that, right? Sterling Hayden, classic Hollywood guy, gets taken out by Pacino, the face of New Hollywood.
That restaurant scene is such a potent symbol of that transition, yeah. It's almost like Coppola was commenting on the film industry itself through the mafia story.
Like he knew the old ways were changing, and his generation had to navigate that.
Possibly. Aware that the golden age was transforming, and they had to forge a new path, grapple with that legacy while creating something new and maybe more complex.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the big takeaway on Coppola and The Godfather?
I think Coppola fundamentally redefined what a big studio film could be. He showed you could have this grand, epic story and this incredibly deep, intimate psychological study at the same time.
And his style set a new course.
Definitely. That chiaroscuro look, the deliberate pacing, the focus on family roots, it really paved the way for so much of the ambitious, auteur-driven cinema that followed. Its DNA is all over contemporary film.
It feels like he took a crime story and elevated it.
He absolutely did. He turned it into something like a classical tragedy, exploring these huge universal themes, loyalty, power, the cost of legacy. The Godfather showed cinema's power to grapple with the deepest parts of the human condition.
Truly transformative. Okay, before we go, here's something for you to chew on. Think about how that central tension in the Godfather tradition versus change, old power versus new, how that continues to play out today. Not just in stories, but in our own understanding of power structures and societal shifts. Definitely food for thought.